live stream that I do on a Monday. And if you're watching for the first time, my name is Marianne. I'm the owner and the counsellor at Marianne Hanson Counselling Service. You can watch the same version of this live stream over on my Facebook page, which is the same name, Marianne Hanson Counselling Service. And I've also gone live on my personal page, Marianne Hanson, where I was talking about, it's just a motivational live stream, which is called Small Progress is Better Than No Progress. But what I want to talk about today is using a psychodynamic approach or psychodynamic therapy to understand our adult relationships. So the last live stream I did, I don't know if it was the last one, last Monday, or whether it was a few weeks back, I was talking about CBT. So I was talking about using a CBT approach. So what I'm doing is I'm just looking at different approaches in therapy, and I'm just kind of linking them with how that therapist would work, some of the themes. Thanks for joining, whoever's joined, so that we can just talk about that really. So psychodynamic therapy is derived from psychoanalysis and the theories of Sigmund Freud. So most people have probably heard of Freudian slip. So that's a common word that is taken from Sigmund Freud. You've probably heard of the fact that he was obsessed with people being in love with their mothers. You know, there's quite a lot of things which are, or words that are used, or phrases which are linked back to Sigmund Freud and psychoanalysis. And when people have probably seen programs where they've seen people sitting on the couch and they've said, lie back on the couch and just tell me what you're thinking, say any word association, that also comes from psychoanalysis as well. So really, the main things with psychodynamic therapy is that it believes that your current feelings are shaped by your past. So what they determine or they feel is that anything that's going on in your current relationships with people, or your current interactions, or even just in your life, if you're stuck, or if there's something that's going on with you, it all has its roots in the past. So what they say is that if they're able to help you find patterns of what happened when you were young, whether it was to do with your parents, the type of care that you had, whether that was inconsistent parenting, or whether it was to do with relationships in your past, they're saying all of that, all those roads can lead to some of the issues you're having in your current relationships. So thanks again for joining, whoever's joined. So it's about getting to the root of the problem and recognizing that things in your unconscious thoughts might be keeping you stuck. Because I've worked with clients, especially recently as well, things have come up where the person is unable to move forward from, say, like a breakup, or they're stuck in the past and they're constantly sabotaging some of their relationships. And when you then go backwards and you start to look at their early relationships that they had with their caregivers, then it makes sense, because there's lots of people. So I'm not just talking about, I'm not talking about clients, I don't talk about client work, but overall in general, there's lots of people who, because they didn't have that significant figure in their past, or the significant figures that they did have were destructive or were very abusive or whatever it was, now when they're in their current relationship, psychodynamic theory would say that they're projecting onto those people. So they're doing it in two different ways, or a few different ways. Thanks Ellie, and thanks Official Kim for joining. So if you had a really strange relationship with your dad, and your dad was just an inconsistent person in your life, you know, would pop up one minute but then the next time wouldn't be there, or sometimes they were strict with you and then another time they were all over you and all the rest of it, you didn't know where you stood. Thanks Rumi for joining. In your current relationships, you can either be projecting onto your current partner the same things that you, same interactions that you would have had with your dad. So maybe you couldn't say to your dad, Dad, why are you never here? Or I'm really angry with you because you're always, I don't know where I stand with you. But you might say the same thing to your partner because you're projecting on things that you wanted to say to your dad but couldn't. So that's when we use the term like projection or transference. The other way that it can show up is because your needs were not met by your mum and or dad. What have you put? Is this free therapy? No, this is psychodynamic or psychoanalysis, but yeah, free association comes into that, which I'm going to talk about as well. But free therapy, So the other way that it would show up is if your needs were not met as a child, so this is what psychodynamic therapy is all about, you're forever then, this blueprint has already been set. So a psychodynamic counsellor would say that if your needs were not met between the ages of 0 to 10 or 0 to 5 specifically as a child, you can't compensate for that. You can't. It's not saying that that's it, your life is over with, you're not going to be in any good relationships, but it's saying that that gap is not going to be able to be filled. So even if you're spending your life trying to, well, it's like when people are seeking someone who they want to replace what they didn't meet, that their dad didn't meet, so they're looking for a father figure, or some people say they're looking for a father figure. You can't do that. So what you then do is in your relationship, you're trying to put pressure on the person that you're with, and you're wanting them to be all things to you. But what psychodynamic therapy would say is you need to work through the past, really. You need to work with the issues that were there so that in your current situation, you can then be more free to be yourself and to do, to release that. Because that person will never be able to fulfill what you didn't get when you were 10. They're not, it's not capable of them to do that. But if you're looking for them to fill those needs, they're never going to be able to. And so that's sort of what it's saying a little bit. It also talks about this approach focuses on your unconscious thoughts and your emotions. And it says to identify patterns, because it's saying that most people are really operating from their unconscious thoughts. It's not the things that you already know. So when you do something, this is only what psychodynamic therapy says, or psychoanalysis. It says you're behaving in a way that is, you don't even know, it's so far back in your past that you're not even aware of it. So it says we don't have self-awareness. So when we're doing certain things, or when we feel certain things, so if someone was depressed, and they go into a psychodynamic counsellor, they're not going to talk about your current day-to-day stuff. They'll leave that to a CBT practitioner. They're not going to give you techniques for getting out of bed, going for walks. They'll say, what's the point in doing that? They're not going to focus on the depression in its current state. What they're going to do is they're going to take you back to the beginning. So they're going to look at how you were raised. They're going to look at the inconsistencies that maybe existed when you were younger. They're going to look at some of the events that happened throughout your life, and then they're going to link those with the patterns of where you are today. So they're going to say your depression is linked from when you were 6 years old, and maybe your mum spent 2 weeks in hospital, and during that period of time you had to fend for yourself. Or when you used to feel sad, someone used to say to you that we don't do sadness in our house. That's not what we do. We're strong, we get through anything. So they're going to look at those events, and then they're going to see how those events are now impacting on you now. So in a relationship, how does that all come about? Well, it comes about because if you're not aware of why you are behaving in a particular way, and it's in your unconscious, it's not in your conscious thoughts, you're going to behave in a way that disrupts any relationship that you're in. So psychodynamic is also linked with attachment theory. So if you think about it, hi football kid, if you think about it, going back to this attachment again, and I've done loads of videos on attachment theory, but I just want to link it in with psychodynamic because it is close. If that attachment was already set when you were like younger, so you had an avoidant parent, or you had a parent who was inconsistent. One day it was like, come in, oh, I'm glad to see you from school, sit down, oh, I'll make you something to eat, let's put the fire on, and it was all beautiful. But then the next day it was like, sort yourself out, make yourself something to eat. I'm not here to be your slave. I'm not here as your, why are you always wanting me to do things? For a child, you're going to be quite confused. You're not going to know what's going on. So when you're in a relationship, unconsciously, this is what psychodynamic is saying, when your partner behaves in two different ways, you're not going to know what to do. And even sometimes when they're not doing anything major, but maybe one day they say they're going to phone you at 10 o'clock, and they do, but then another day they don't phone you at 10, you're there going, oh, something must be wrong. oh, something's wrong with me, oh, they must be cheating on me, this must be happening. But really what psychodynamic theory is saying is, because you were let down in the past, in your childhood, anything that now happens in your current life or your current relationship, you attach meaning to it, you get triggered by it, but that's not sometimes what's happening. So it tries to help you see that if you keep repeating that pattern, then you're going to keep, like, your relationships are going to keep ending, but it's not going to be because there's something wrong with the relationship. It's because you are trying to recreate what you had in childhood, or that's your beliefs about, like, you know, your parents. So yeah, the free association thing. So I think that's what someone mentioned, free therapy. So free associate, or did you mean, is this free therapy meaning, am I giving, yeah, you brought, maybe official Kim, I don't know if you're saying, am I giving you free therapy? This is not a therapy session, this is just explaining about psychodynamic, or I didn't know if you meant free therapy, which I'm going to talk about free association, which is a key part of psychodynamic. So free association, you may have seen programs or films where you see someone lying on a couch, maybe from like years ago, old-fashioned times where people were told to come into the doctor's office, lie flat on a sofa, and then say whatever's on your mind. Now, the modern psychoanalysts, they wouldn't work in the same way, but they would work in a similar way. Now, when I had NLP coaching, this was someone that I paid some money to, and I went down to London, and she did this thing where she kept showing me, she says, can you see a red, can you see a green, can you see a blue? I still don't know what it was. So neuro-linguistic programming, which is a completely different thing. And she was telling, what words can you see? What words can you think? What can you? She was throwing all these. I didn't understand what was going on, but apparently that's like a thing. So free association is when you're what the psychoanalysts would say is that we sometimes we have things on our mind, but we suppress what we're thinking and feeling because we feel that society is not going to accept it. So Sigmund Freud had this thing that he said lots of people were sexual deviants, or lots of people had sexual feelings towards their mother. He was very controversial because he said, like, boys loved their mother and they got jealous when their mother, their mum and dad was together. There was there's two men, I can't go into it in one live. If you're interested in psychodynamic therapy, then go online. But if you're interested in Sigmund Freud, especially as well, go online about him. He's got his own different theories. But anyway, coming back to it, this whole idea of having unconscious thoughts which we suppress. So we suppress those thoughts because we believe that people are either going to judge us if we say things, or we feel ashamed. So shame is a big part as well of psychodynamic theory, the shame that sometimes people feel because it's coming from either childhood stuff or it's coming from society. So what he says is when you do free association, it means you can release all of that. So you can just say what's on your mind. So you might say, I don't know, you just throw out words that are on your mind, and then the skilled therapist would be able to sort of make sense of those things because they're saying those things are in your unconscious thoughts. So a good example would be, so you know when you go on Facebook, and I've been on Facebook this week, and they're doing these things where there's a teacher, school teacher, this is a good example actually, who has got a particular shape, body shape, and then they're dressed in a particular way. And then it says this teacher has gone viral because sexy teacher and all this. And then you'll see in the comments people, yeah, I'd want her to be my teacher anytime. And then people are saying she's dressed inappropriately. And then it's like the students won't learn anything and that sort of thing. This is where this comes into it, you see, because this is just a teacher going into school, and regardless of shape, size and whatever it is, they're teaching the class. But society's perception would be that because of how they're dressed, the children are going to have certain thoughts, and these unconscious thoughts that they have, the parents are more worried that the children probably will hold thoughts about this teacher, whether they were dressed in that sexy way or not. They can't control, like, their young boys' urges. So the teachers get angry and project onto the parents onto the teacher. So then all of a sudden it's the teacher's fault that you exist because my boy is coming home and saying you're a sexy teacher, or not even saying it, the boy is thinking that. So what Freud would say, or what psychodynamic would say, is those thoughts exist regardless. and they're just awakened, that we're all like aroused by something, because it doesn't have to be in front of us. They said people are walking around with these thoughts and feelings. So when you have psychodynamic theory therapy and you words come out, that's when all the things that you were secretly feeling come out. And then that's when the psychotherapist is not judging you. They're trying to make sense of where these things have been, because he said that we all have unconscious thoughts and feelings that exist. They're all within us. So the other thing it talks about is psychodynamic therapy, it says, increases your level of awareness about yourself and about the world. Because if you are, once you get that information about why do I feel like this? Why do I think this way? Why am I always worried about my partner cheating when there's no evidence of that? Why am I so anxious about not being away from my partner? You know, separation anxiety, that's a classic example of like, for children who either spend too much time around their parents when they're younger, so the minute they go off to university they literally have a panic attack or a breakdown, or the minute they're away from their parents for 2 seconds. But the similar thing can happen with partners. So if you see the link between a baby who is get left in a room and starts crying and they get separation anxiety, and a grown adult who their partner goes to work and they have to phone him 50 times a day, or her, it's a similar thing. And that's why Freud is saying it, you know, it starts from childhood, because the adult now says, this person's going to leave me. You know, abandonment issues, rejection, fear of rejection, all of these stuff some of it comes from the past, some of it comes from, you know, childhood. Because if you've had like a bereavement or lots of bereavements, or if you've had, and it doesn't mean everyone's the same, because, you know, I've had bereavements, but I would say that because I've processed them in the appropriate way, because I've grieved, I've given myself the time to grieve and this sort of thing, I wouldn't be in a relationship and have a fear of someone dying or leaving me, because the reason that like that would happen with someone is because they haven't processed properly. Maybe they've not grieved for the loss. And it's similar to abandonment. You know, you won't have abandonment issues if you've worked through and processed why your one parent left, or why that relationship ended. So all it's really saying is, at the root of it, is that it helps you, psychodynamic therapy helps you to kind of process your unconscious thoughts and your emotions. It discusses your childhood relationships. It identifies the patterns between what happened in your past and what's going on in your present. And it looks at your unconscious more than it looks at the conscious. It tries to really look at feelings that people would not normally tap into. Shame, you know, I feel shame. Guilt, you know, insecurity, fear. So it's a really good it's a long-term approach. So it's not similar to CBT or solution focused, where, you know, you will get those techniques, you'll get those approaches, and every different type of therapy has its own benefits and it has its own advantages. You have to decide as a when you go into therapy what works for you. Some people don't want to talk about the past. Some people will say, I'm struggling with work-related stress, or I'm struggling with anxiety. Give me some techniques so that I can use them now. You know, give me some help, some tools. I want to fix this. I don't want to talk about what happened when I was 10 years old. Other people will find it really useful. So I think it all depends on what the issue is, where you are in your life, and what you think works for you. But I think psychodynamic approach, I didn't study specifically in this. I'm integrative, so I know a bit about this, but I'd say I've got more knowledge in CBT and in like a person-centered approach, which I'll talk about a few others as we go along. So if you found this useful, feel free. Thank you to everyone that joined. I really appreciate you for jumping on this live stream. Every Monday I'll be going live. I'm also going to be uploading a video soon about a challenge that I'm doing in October, which is called 5K every day, and that's for an organisation called Campaign Against Living Miserably, where they help people who are suicidal. So I will put some information about that, but you can find it more on my Facebook page. I've put it on my personal page, and I'll be putting it on my business page, Marianne Hanson Counselling Service. Thank you, everyone. And David, you've just joined. How are you? I've just started therapy with your psychologist. Have my third session. Right, okay. So David, yeah. So the type of therapy they'll probably do is some trauma therapy for you, but this will really tie in with like psychodynamic stuff as well, because yeah, if anyone has struggled with, say, childhood trauma, things that have happened in their childhood, to try to move forward as an adult without processing those things can be really difficult, but also something somewhere will get it. I'd say, I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it's unlikely that you are going to be able to just suppress everything that happened and move forward as an adult without something triggering you or coming up. So yeah, going into long-term therapy with a psychologist or a psychiatrist or someone who works psychodynamically, especially for trauma, is really powerful, and it's really worth it. So I wish you all the best with that, David. So thank you everyone for joining on this live stream. Really appreciate it, and I'll speak to you all soon. Have a great day. Bye.